Good morning, folks. The day is May 1st, 2024. Welcome to Dropkick the Commute. I'm, of course, Mr. Galeer here for the morning commute. Happy May, everybody. Crazy that we made it here and it's already May. Time is a flat circle, and one thing I know that stays consistent throughout all of time is pro wrestling, and that's what we're here to talk about. I don't believe Mufasi will be joining me for this one, but we got some talking points. Of course, the preview of AEW Dynamite. You know, we got a lot of interesting things happening that we need to talk about. Something that actually kind of, I feel like, takes a little more priority than the rest of the stuff on this list is Kenny Omega is going to be returning. This is interesting for a multitude of reasons. One of them, of course, being the whole angle with the Elite. And, we talked about Tony Khan getting the TK driver from the Elite. And, that whole segment where Tony Khan just got obliterated by them. Previously, the Bucks had stated that Kenny is fired from the Elite because he won't show up or something like that. I do remember they went on a promo and said, Kenny and Hangman, you're fired. We're probably going to have some type of development that could potentially result in a feud between Kenny and, say, Jack Perry. And we've seen the two do the dance before. Actually, one of my favorite matches in Dynamite's history was the world title match between Jack Perry and Kenny Omega back in the summer of 21 when he was still world champion. It's one of my favorite matches to watch from Jack Perry and from Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega obviously wrestled a lot of people, but there's potential for that, and now Jack Perry's hotter than ever. There's potential, again, for maybe some type of program where Kenny faces the Bucks with Kota Ibushi, because wherever Kenny goes, Kota usually follows. Or it could be somebody else. Who knows? There's an opportunity for Kenny to face the Rainmaker, which would be really sick. Could be something completely different, but you got to think that if Kenny's showing up, then it might have something to do with this segment. But the other reason that this is a bit of a big deal is because Kenny went on record, I believe, on one of his streams, is where people were hearing it, and said, I didn't know I was going to be on Dynamite next week. And it didn't sound like he was, doing a work. It sounded like he had just found out by seeing his name and his graphic on the screen watching Dynamite on Wednesday that he was going to be on next week. It sounded very confusing. It sounded like he was very confused by that. It does look like he's going to be there, and he's one of their higher paid stars. He's one of the EVPs, of course, so, I'm sure he'll show up. But if that is the case, and Kenny didn't know he was supposed to be there, that is no bueno. And obviously we know AEW has a history of miscommunication with talent. Think back to the CM Punk, having to take the tube over to Wembley Stadium. I think of all the times there's been miscommunication that has really blown up in their face. By no fault of theirs, mind you. But we'll see what happens. Kenny's going to be there. I don't think we're going to find out much about him in that miscommunication. I don't think we're going to learn much more about that. I think we're going to just see him show up on TV and, work a storyline. So that should be exciting. We're going to be having the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho, up against Katsuyori Shibata for the FTW Championship. And might I add, since we didn't really get a chance to talk about Dynasty fully, Chris Jericho's got to go, man. I've heard a lot of different opinions on it, and I understand, he's good to have around, elevate new talent, but it is, a little annoying. It's first we went from his whole, his whole tag team with Kenny Omega, where that was at least promising, and then Kenny obviously injured, so nothing was going to happen there. They replaced him with Sammy. No one really cared. And then we went from that to Lionheart to Lion Hook to now the Learning Tree. And I don't hate the Learning Tree per se. I think it's really cool that they're like leaning into this idea of Jericho is like so far up his ass, he like is like, listen to me because you'll benefit from me, and I'll be as much of a heel as I can to like prove that to you. Like, I think it's a good gimmick, especially for Jericho, but I just kind of don't want to see him on my TV screen anymore, especially like around World's End when all that stuff came out about, him being a weirdo. And of course everything is hearsay. What kind of proof do we have? We have a little bits here and there. I'm always on the stance of believing victims. AEW's has a history of being very selective with who they give a platform. Hulk Hogan banned from AEW for obvious reasons, but keeping someone like Jay Lethal is a good example, or even a Chris Jericho. And that's not me saying like Hulk Hogan should be allowed on AEW TV. By no stretch of the imagination, do not misconstrue my words there. Jericho he's getting old. He still moves pretty well for his age, but you could literally hear during his match on Dynasty, people were chanting like, please retire. Please retire. Like, they don't want him. And they certainly didn't want to see him take the FTW championship from Hook. But I mean, again, I guess it's a more heat kind of situation for Jericho. So that's what we have. I don't know where they're going to take that whole storyline next. I don't know if Hook's going to get that title back. I kind of hope he does, because I think it's really good for Hook, and it's like, his dad's belt and all that. But in the same vein, it could be interesting to see it get passed around a little more.
Hi, how can I help you?
Hi, can I get a bacon, egg, and cheese on a cinnamon raisin bagel with hash browns?
Yeah, man. Any drinks today?
No, thank you.
Right, you're all set.
Thanks. Some new updates from Dunkin'. They have a watermelon burst donut, and I don't think I want it. They also have a kiwi watermelon refresher, which could be good, but probably not. We'll see.
Hi, $5.70. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Here you are.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
You too. All right, rolling on with the scheduled events for Dynamite. Samoa Joe's going to be in action, and he's going to be facing Isaiah Cassidy. I'm really glad they're still, they're not writing Joe off TV. It makes sense for some champions to disappear after the world title. MJF banged up when he lost his. Kenny banged up when he lost his. I think Adam Page stuck around. But, I like when the champions stick around and it's not like, oh, I lost the world title, now I can't be, seen on TV in certain cases. This is really good. It's probably just, if I had to guess, it's probably going to be some kind of squash. Maybe something to set up Samoa Joe in a new feud so we keep him relevant. People were speculating that he was, after that title match, he was going to go to WWE again, which, one, I think would be hella ridiculous. He's already been back there 3 times now? Twice? They could probably take him back and it would be nice, but, I think, personally, he's going to stick around, and we'll see what happens with this match. The Cope Open, Adam Copeland has been in this whole thing with the House of Black. He said any one of them can step up for the TNT title, so see what happens with that. I wonder, I don't think he'll drop it to any of those guys, but if he did drop it to someone, I'd like to see him drop it to Malachi Black. Malachi Black is just phenomenal. Definitely hasn't had enough singles matches in AEW. I'd love to see him featured more prominent. Honestly, Buddy Matthews too. And on that note, Buddy Matthews and Malachi Black had an insane feud 2019, early 2020, back when they were in WWE. Like, they're both great singles wrestlers, and I think they benefit a lot from the House of Black, but I think they'd also benefit a little more from more singles matches. I'm interested in seeing if Christian comes back, if he's going to continue whatever is going on with Edge. Because I think he should continue his whole, Father of the Year thing. I don't know what Christian's return timetable is. There's a lot of people that are not being seen right now. Got Mariah May versus Serena Deeb. Mariah May, man. I think if we're gonna see anybody anytime soon dethrone Toni Storm, well, I don't know if she'll be next to dethrone Toni Storm, but I think she'll definitely be up for a challenge. I still think they need to build her up in AEW, regardless of how good she was or is in Stardom, which we know she is. That's why she was such a huge signing. At the end of the day, she's still Tony's sidekick. I don't think she'll be the one to take the belt off of Tony. I think if anything, it's going to be a Thunder Rosa or Mercedes Moné, or even depending on how this TBS title reign goes, maybe Willow Nightingale. Mariah May is definitely on her way, and they keep teasing when's Mariah May going to get a title shot, and the truth is, we don't know until we see it. For now, we continue building Mariah May. She's facing Serena Deeb, who has been getting some attention recently too, some vignettes and before her return and stuff like that. So maybe Serena Deeb will be next to challenge Toni Storm. It's all kind of up in the air, and I do apologize if stuff has already been established on TV, because I didn't watch last week's episode. That's a lie. I watched bits and pieces. So any filler I might have missed on Twitter or what have you. So that'll be good. Orange Cassidy is scheduled to speak. I'm so glad Orange Cassidy is using the mic now and talking and promoing, even if it's it's in character, so I guess it's not bad, but I'm just glad they give him a mic and he's, out here vibing. Presumably going to speak on all this stuff going on with Trent and Chuck, so we'll see what happens there. Very interesting thing here as well. Swerve Strickland's challenger at Double or Nothing will be revealed. I find this interesting considering last week they had an eliminator match. Had Kyle Fletcher won that match, he would have probably been the Double or Nothing challenger, I assume. Or maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know who they're going to put up against Swerve Strickland. I'm not necessarily a fan of his challenger will be revealed this week. I just hope they don't shaft him like they did last week and actually give him some memorable TV time. As for me, my morning commute's over. I'm at work. And we will see you back here for the evening commute. Ladies and gents, the work day is over, and thus starts the evening commute. Let's talk about NXT Spring Breakin Night 2. I gotta say, they've been doing it for a long time, but I'm a big fan of the 2-night NXT events that they do. And they've been doing them since, I want to say, 2021, 2020 even. It's interesting because WrestleMania COVID kind of signaled the start of 2-night events, but WrestleMania was the first experiment with that. It allowed for us to get a taste of, different... more to look forward to, I guess, is the best way I'd put it. And then NXT started doing 2-night events, but instead of back-to-back nights, they were stretched across 2 days. And I think that's a really cool formula to have. Almost kind of treats it like a pay-per-view. I feel like NXT's always kind of had a big fight feel for most of their shows, though. They have this interesting way of just keeping the energy up, both for the wrestlers and for the commentators. But yeah, Spring Breakin Night 1, obviously. A lot of great highlights there. Lyra Valkyria, and I believe it was Fallon Henley. Or no, sorry, Tatum Paxley. I gotta say, one thing I'm not crazy about is some of the wacky little unique names that come out of developmental. They all kind of sound like names that you'd hear like celebrities name their kids. They're not like totally ridiculous, but God, I saw one on the show earlier and I can't remember it. I'm still like learning about the new class of NXT. I've been watching for a while on and off. You know, there's always new people coming in and leaving. So anyways, last week, you know, we had Tatum Paxley and Lyra Valkyria challenge for the women's title against Roxanne in a triple threat match. Roxanne came out on top in some nice heel fashion. She's doing some okay heel work. I'd like to see how she continues to like carry this character forward, because I feel like the first night she really debuted as a heel, nobody was really buying it. People were cheering for her, in fact, because they were happy she won. And she was trying to turn them against her, but it didn't necessarily work. So interested to see how that plays out. We had Trick Williams last week winning the NXT Championship against Ilya Dragunov. And let me tell you, if anybody deserves it right now, that man has grinded and worked for it, and for the last 2 years. The transformation's been insane. Trick Williams is a bona fide star, in my opinion, as was Carmelo Hayes, and they spent a lot of time with each other, so I'm sure Carmelo Hayes, you know, it was good for him to be under the tutelage, so to speak, but they were both learning in that sense too. And now Carmelo's obviously called up to the main roster. Trick gets a chance to shine on his own. So those were obviously the big things coming out of last week. Spring Breakin Night 2, however, or Week 2, I don't know how they refer to it. We opened the show with Trick Williams, you know, coming out and celebrating a little his new championship victory, and we get a Lash Legend interrupting the promo. Of course, she is in a stable with Noam Dar, and then is it Jakara Jackson, I want to say? And again, I'm still learning the names. You know, the more I watch, the more we'll get a little bit more familiar with it. But she basically came out with an envelope and waved it around and was like, okay. And Trick was like, come on, dude, what's in the fucking envelope? And then we didn't really find out till later, and then Noam Dar cut a little promo and was like, hey, you're invited to our talk show next week, the Supernova Sessions. So we're going to have Trick Williams. One can only assume, you know, Noam Dar is the next challenger for the NXT Championship. I think he's a great wrestler. I watched a lot of his, you know, matches with the Heritage Cup. I feel like he's always been kind of a constant in NXT UK back when that was still a thing. So I'm interested to see what they do there. It's going to be very cool. Another notable match, Oba Femi, the North American champion, defending against Ivar, which was quite the big ticket match, I'd say. Oba Femi, he reminds me of like guys like Brock Lesnar, and then like he reminds me of like a UFC grade fighter and wrestler. So like Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, you know, big dudes like that. But I don't know what it is. He's just a really strong dude. And at one point he had Ivar like lifted up on his shoulders, you know, just marching around. And I thought to myself, God damn. And I thought Ivar was a genetic freak. And he is. They were flexing their chops, dude. They were cooking out there. You know, ultimately, through all the lifting the heavy dudes and Ivar doing moonsaults and diving off the top rope, like, Oba Femi came out on top, and we loved what we saw. It was a fantastic match. Definitely, you know, solidifying himself as a great champion for NXT. So I'm interested to see what happens, because Wes Lee returned from his back injury, and Wes Lee, I've been following him for quite some time now, back to his days in Impact. It's crazy to think he's been around for like 3 or 4 years now, since, you know, getting picked up by NXT. He had a little backstage segment with Josh Briggs and Ivar, and he was like, hey, I'm going to take back what's mine. And Josh Briggs was like, well, I'm number one contender, so go through me first. So they're going to have a match next week. But then also Ivar's like, I'm not done with Oba. So you got to imagine maybe this will pick up towards either some kind of triple threat or fatal four-way between the four of them, which could be interesting. I feel like, again, they always do great stuff with that. Nathan Frazier and Axiom were defending against AOP of the Final Testament. Very interesting. I didn't see if there was any build to this, so to me it just seemed kind of random. But of course, Axiom and Nathan Frazier, always fun to watch, flying around, doing their crazy little moves, defying the odds, being underdogs. They come out on top due to an interference from the New Catch Republic, Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate. I can only imagine that has to do with some kind of program they're doing on the main roster. You really, like, on paper, like, AOP wins this match just because they're fucking nasty at everything they do. Clearly, I think it was just, like, a match to have a match, and you know, it makes the tag team champs look good, so that's all fun and good. They got hyped up by the Street Profits beforehand. Very, very fun. We also got a little segment from Ava, the general manager, talking about crowning the first ever women's North American champion at Battleground, which is approaching. So Ava came out and talked about the North American Women's Championship, which will be crowned at Battleground, in a ladder match, doing a callback to the first time the first North American champion was crowned back in the day. So that's super exciting. A bunch of the female wrestlers just came out and started beating the crap out of each other, like, I'm gonna do it. So I guess next week they're gonna have a combine to determine who will be put in that match, which is always interesting. It's almost kind of like the NFL and you know, like, you know, everyday sports like basketball and football, where they have draft combines to see who's kind of like at the top of their list. So I'm interested to see what they do for that. We had, you know, Sean Spears versus Ridge Holland, Thea Hale versus JC Jane. I think those matches could have been a lot better if they were given more time on the card, but, you know, c'est la vie. And then we had our main event, which was an underground match between Natalia and Lola Vice. I don't know if they've been doing this on NXT as of late. I don't know if this is like a regular thing, but I haven't seen an underground match since 2020 when they did it on Raw Underground and Shane McMahon was the host. Like, that stuff always blew my mind, and it was really, like, cheesy, but I didn't hate it. But when NXT did it, I loved it. And I think it's just because it fits the vibe of NXT more. It's like they're not taking it as seriously as they did when they did Raw Underground. I think this is just like, it fits better with the location and, you know, the commentary from Vic Joseph. Everything just like, it like makes more sense. So I was a fan of this. I'm a fan of Natalia. I'm a fan of Lola Vice. She's going to be a women's champ one day. They put on quite the showing. Again, I was nervous for Natalia because I didn't know how she'd do in this kind of match, but they built her up really well for it. Lola Vice, I've never seen more like angry looking, which is great. I think it works for her. Basically, there was interference from Shayna Baszler, which kind of caused the W, and that's kind of more or less the evening commute for us. So we'll catch y'all later in the next one.